Hello, students. I am Zak Weber. I'm a researcher at Brigham Young University up in Provo, Utah. Right now, we're pretty much all online. I'm actually in one of my research labs right here. Here we study cancer and some things like that. Some of you may remember I came down last year. We did a little collaborative project, the Sunflower Project. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But before I begin, I just want to talk a little bit as your class is studying kind of environmental sciences and sciences that are applied. I want to talk just about why this matters. Okay, I think a lot of times we think, oh, environmental science is important to save the environment, but we don't really understand the connection with humans. Okay, so let me just share my desktop with you. So first, I just want to show you this, and I think you're all familiar by now and probably are sick of all the information you're getting about COVID-19. Now, the reason I bring this up is because in a lot of ways, this could be seen as an environmental issue. COVID-19 itself was the result of what we call a zoonotic virus. Okay, zoonotic viruses and emerging diseases. 80% of all the new viruses that we see today and of the new diseases we see across the world that cause pandemics, 80% of those have to do with environmental issues. Those issues include deforestation, climate change, but most commonly is more animals. We're bringing animals that have not been in contact with other animals all together in one place. And so a lot of them have come from wet markets in Asia, where you have these animal markets that are taken from their native habitats, and they're taken and sold by poachers. And so, again, this is an issue that really could have been prevented, solved by good environmental policy. And so as you think about your futures and careers, remember environmental health is human health. There is no difference between the two. They're one and the same. So I just want to show you one other thing right here before I get into the rest of my presentation. But the UN has started a project just to look at how the environment shapes gender-based violence. Okay, so violence against women is predicted and seen to be much higher in environments that are depleted, in environments that are damaged. And so environmental health is not different from human health. They are one and the same. And so I hope, if anything, you take away from this presentation in our class today is that I hope you realize that the connection to the environment causes huge problems in economics. It causes huge problems across the world. Now, gratefully, you've probably all heard that with the shutdown as well, we're also seeing some positive effects in the environment. And I think we could do better to think of the world as kind of a living thing, and that living thing is what sustains us in many ways. And so we really should take care to kind of think through the environment. Okay. All right, next I'm just going to show you this presentation. Hopefully it loads. Sometimes it takes a minute. We'll see here. But I came down last year, and some of you that were juniors and now seniors may remember, but I came down and we did a project kind of investigating sunflowers. So I'm just going to talk about kind of what my project was and why I thought it was important, what we found from that, since I didn't really get a chance before now to get the data. Oh no, we'll see if this works, guys. Okay, we're going to try this again. I'm just going to go ahead and pause this recording. All right, so I just want to, hopefully the recording's working again. But again, my project as I came down here was looking into sunflowers and whether they would be effective filtering uranium from water on the Navajo Nation. And now, unfortunately, they were ineffective. And in fact, we found some really interesting findings by studying this. Again, why should we care about the environment? I just want to re-mention that 70 to 80% of emerging diseases are caused by environmental issues, okay, and whether that's animals or wildlife or deforestation or climate change. 70 to 80% of emerging diseases, and that's not including things like gender violence and other problems causing disease and death. Okay, so background. So why did I get involved with the Navajo Nation, and why, you know, a common question is, what is a Billy Ghana doing down in the Navajo Nation doing research? So take a minute, see if you can find my grandfather. And if you're guessing this one Billy Ghana guy right here, then you're right, that's my grandfather. He grew up on a reservation in the Oregon area. And he became very close friends with many of his classmates. Many of these people became his lifelong friends, and so he always was connected to that community. And it became a community that was important to my family and my heritage. And so I later got a job working with American Indian Services. They do a little summer prep program. It was super fun to be able to spend some time just in the summer and teaching in water science. And I couldn't help but notice that, you know, the way that we teach our history and the things and the problems that disparities that communities face were not fair, and it began to be something that kind of changed the way I saw the history of the Navajo Nation. And I began to see that there had been lots of treaties violated and broken, and things that really mattered, and really I found kind of unfortunate and unfair, and I couldn't just ignore it. And so I started to really look into water quality issues. Okay, as I started to look into the issues that affected my students, I really became cognizant of the fact that many of them don't have access to clean water. And there's uranium, arsenic, and other things that are commonly in the water all across the Navajo Nation. And I found an article by some Korean scientists saying that these plants can take out uranium from water. If the plant was just in water with no soil, they saw that it took up uranium. Now, this hadn't ever been tested in soil, so no one actually knew if this worked in soil. They just knew it worked when it was floating in water. So imagine just a plant kind of floating in a pond of water, and it could take uranium up. But I decided to test, well, could it work in the Navajo Nation in the soil conditions? And so some of you helped me. We were able to collect a bunch of samples. So we were able to sample that water and kind of just get some basic data. As well, then we did a test. My mentor, Ben Abbott, he's up here at Brigham Young University. He helped me, as well. Tommy Rock, who is an awesome collaborator and really professional environmental scientist, helped me with this project. And so for the experiment, what we did is we first contacted schools, and we found your teacher, Mrs. Groenwald, and we determined their level of interest. We established collaboration with the teachers for the project, and we established kind of this collaboration. We came down to the school, explained what we wanted to do, and then we came down and we performed an experiment. And you planted the seeds, your class was able to grow up these plants to be kind of ready for this experiment, and then we grew some as well and brought them down. And then we came and we filled them up with water, and this water would go through the soil in the plants, and it would collect at the bottom. And then because of the force, we would take this water from the bottom, put it back on top, and this would force any water that was remaining in contact with the roots to the bottom again. And so we would filter the water and get a sample. When we collect our sample, it was actually the water that was in contact with the roots. Okay, that's why we took this water out and put it back on top, because we wanted to see the water that was in contact with these roots. And so we did that, and we expected to see that this water over time would have less uranium in it because the plant would be taking the uranium out. So we would take a sample every couple of hours and see what happened to the uranium levels. And so we had our method of collecting sample. Now, this is what we saw. So just take a minute, kind of look at this graph. And now this is a complex graph. It's a smooth linear regression. And so what this is this gray zone is kind of the range of the plants, okay, and the range of our controls, which had no plants. Okay, and we see the gray zones overlap, which means there's no difference, no statistical difference between our plants and the controls. However, there is a statistical difference between the beginning here and the end. And what do you notice? In the level of uranium, it's going up. Okay, so you actually see an increase in uranium in the 13 hours. And most of that increase occurs in the first like 2.5 hours. Okay, and so this was not what we expected at all. And so we did a graph here to kind of show this. And so again, this is kind of the mean right here, the average, and you can see the average is statistically higher than the average at the beginning. And so this tells us that in all controls and plants, you have an increase of uranium over time. Now, so you can make some predictions about why this is, and I can kind of talk about what we learned. What we learned is the soil dynamics. The actual soil is composed of all these tiny particles. Now, this is just a bunch of rocks, but I think it represents the soil itself pretty well. The soil itself is not an even mixture, okay? It's not evenly mixed. And there's areas where there's going to be more of one thing more than less of another. There's going to be clay. There's going to be all these other things that make the soil affect the rate of filtration. And so one thing that I found is that the soil effects were what increased uranium. So in other words, the soil itself was leaching uranium into that water faster than the plant could take it up. We'd have to do more experiments to see how much the plant was actually taking up, but probably not very much compared to how much was leaking in through the soil. So that's a big factor as well. The clay on the plant sedimented, and so that affected how much it went through. Another thing I learned is that through this process, I'm a molecular biologist, so I study more cells and cancer and human disease. So for me, this project was very different. And so don't be afraid in your lives as you go on to college, and hopefully you all do. It rocks. I'm about to graduate, and it's been a blast, the party. But like, honestly, like, don't be afraid to take some risks and to try things that are completely new to you. Environmental science was not something I studied before. It was something I wanted to just try because it was an issue I became passionate about and a community I became connected to. And so that was kind of my motivation for that. And then another thing I learned is the importance of place. It became very hard, unfortunately, to come down and continue to collaborate. And so one of my big takeaways from this project is the importance of being close to the place you're doing science. And I hope that is something that you all are able to learn, that the importance of your place and doing science in your home and your community can make a big difference. And then just as a practical note, don't get overwhelmed. College and school, and as a lot of you in high school, feel this kind of a lot of pressures, a lot of competing things. Sometimes it gets really exhausting. And so just make sure you like have fun, man. Like play some of that good, like your good jams, whatever that is. If you like 9 Inch Nails, which I think they're a great band, but whatever your band is, you know, like make sure you do that. And like with everything going on right now, just don't get overwhelmed. Remember, you still are in your environment, and you still are part of the community you are there. And there are great things that are going to happen in your lives as you continue to do things. So anyway, if you have any questions, feel free to email me. Mrs. Groenwald has my email, and so and she's welcome to provide it to all of you. But hopefully this is important, and I hope if you take away nothing else, I hope you recognize the importance of your environment in your health and the importance of protecting your environment as students.